Thank you and good afternoon. It's been almost 25 years since I used to visit this room where we had Geological discussion group here in the 90s. I was living here in Vancouver and put together a number of companies out here, Camplatz being one of them, which got bought up by Goldcorp at $5 a share, and the spin-off is in fact Camino that our friend Mr. McNaughton was giving a talk on today. So a lot of history has come in this room. Rainy Mountain is actually my old East-West company that merged with a capital pool called Rainy Mountain, and it was Chan Buckland and Bob Buchan, Hank Ewanchuk, and Ed Yukowski, and it was my old East-West company, so we were the qualifying transaction. So I went back to Ontario to then focus on my old stomping grounds. I spent most of my life in Timmins, working not only for the government as the first geophysicist, but I then worked for a company called Rosario Resources out of New York, but based in Toronto, and found the Bell Creek mine, which John just referred to. That was in 1979, and there was a big, massive rush going on because the price of gold took a jump to $800. And there was a bidding war between Anglo-American and AMAX ended up with the company. So I then went to Newmont. And in the course of all of this, I mean, I've spent most of my life in the Timmins camp, and the property that we now have called Brunswick is in fact part of the Timmins camp. Try to advance this, that one, yeah. This one here. So that's a shot of the property that you see. You can drive to the property with my truck, the shallow overburden, not deep overburden like it is in Timmins. And there we go. So this is the series of properties that ended up in Rainy Mountain, hence the name royalty. All of these properties are now farmed in by other companies spending money on the property, and Rainy Mountain actually owns an interest either in the form of shares or net smelter return or even a percentage interest. Brunswick is over here on Highway 144, which links Timmins down the Sudbury, and a branch road that goes into Shining Tree and off into Kirkland Lake to the right. So the Timmins camp here has produced over 75 million ounces of gold, followed by Kirkland Lake, which is an Larder Lake, is 33 million ounces. It's the second largest producer in Ontario, and Red Lake is the third largest with about 25 million ounces. And Val-d'Or, of course, is in the 25 million ounce range. What's important about this is not only I was involved in finding the Bell Creek mine here, but after I went to Newmont, I was asked to come down to Hemlo and help them sort this out. So I actually drilled the discovery hole for Hughes Lang on the Goliath, which woke the camp back up again, 98.5 feet, 0.256 ounces gold. And what's in common between the Bell Creek and Hemlo is these are shear-hosted gold deposits. And there's not narrow quartz veins like you find in Red Lake necessarily, but shear-hosted deposits are the ones that have survived economically over time. Geometry is very important. It's not just the price of gold, it's the geometry of the deposit and the cost of mining. So in the case of Hemlo, it was a 70-foot wide zone, and they used long hole stoping. So at $400 gold, their actual costs were $115 an ounce back in those days. In 1985, when they went into production, that was Hemlo Gold that became Battle Mountain, that became Newmont again, who I used to work for. So I want to make that point because Mike Tremblay, who found the actual Borden deposit that was optioned then by Probe and then sold to Goldcorp at $5 a share, and they're going to truck that ore all the way up to Timmins. Mike Tremblay is actually the prospector working with me on this project in Brunswick, and I've known Mike since 1983 when he graduated in Sault Ste. Marie. This map illustrates all the major structures in northern Ontario. Oops, no, how come that happened? This is the Desser-Porcupine Fault, and this is the Harker-Holloway area, the Timmins camp, Porcupine camp, and these faults continue west into West Timmins. Here we have the Cadillac Fault coming out of Quebec, becoming the Larder Lake Break, which actually becomes the Rideout Fault, coming underneath the cobalt sediments and through Brunswick and through the Chester Township area now being developed by IM Gold, a very large gold deposit here, Another one that I don't even have marked on here is now being developed by Tahoe, which used to be Lakeshore, and it's the Juby deposit. So there's two major developments happening east and west of our Brunswick property. Then you go west over to the Jerome mine, and the right-out fault continues out into the Kapuskasing structure where the Borden deposit is found. And there's conglomerates here, which was the clue for the Borden deposit. Those same conglomerates are seen all the way along the margin of this fault. There's a geological reason for that I won't get into right now. This is a map of the property. We own the whole 6 miles of this township, and the right-out fault is being offset by this younger north-south fault. There's a gold showing here of up to an ounce, 32 grams, found here, a whole bunch of 3.5 grammers in an 8-meter wide shear zone. And I went in there to inspect the property with Mike Tremblay back last year, and lo and behold, there's 4 or 5 other carbonate zones that he hadn't even looked at. So this is the geological map. This is this thin piece of greenstone belt that joins the Swayze belt and the Abitibi belt. It was totally ignored, and for this reason, no discovery had ever been made here before. The area was just clear-cut recently, and that's when the first gold discovery was actually made. Which Mike has then staked. So he staked the whole 6 miles. And the original gold discovery was up in here. So we went in on a mad rush because the claims are due on December the 2nd of last year and did an IP survey and outlined, in fact, not just the right-out fault, but 4 other parallel structures. And we're presently now working on the west side of the property with a brand new grid that you'll see at the end of this talk. So we've got the whole 6 miles. If you're going to compare this with Hoyle Township, in Timmins, the Bell Creek mine would be sitting over here, the Vogel would be sitting here, the Owl would be sitting here, and the Pond deposit would be here. And there's actually a brand new discovery near the Pond deposit. Hasn't even been talked about in Timmins yet. So there's like 6 mines in that 6 miles in Hoyle Township, which is parallel to the other major mines, the Brulin Reef, the Hall Nor, and the Palmore. So from a matter of scale, we've only covered about 1/3 of the property. We've got a lot more of this still to explore. So this is a 3-dimensional model of the IP survey. This is the main right-out fault here. The gold showings right on the north edge of this IP anomaly. So we have very extensive chargeability anomalies tracing out this system. What's important about IP is it detects disseminated sulfides. And disseminated sulfides are the actual host for the gold mineralization. So there's an old saying, you can have pyrite without gold, but you never get gold without pyrite. And that's the premises of doing this. So it's the disseminated sulfides that you pick up. You can't detect this with airborne systems. You can only detect it with ground-induced polarization surveys. And I've been so fortunate having to work with Dr. Brandt at Newmont, who actually invented IP. And I've used this a lot at Rosario to find other gold deposits. The next slide is the resistivity. If the button would work, there we go. And this illustrates the fact that the right-out fault, which is here, is actually got splay faults to the side, and much larger ones, which are the main carbonate sericite hosts for the gold mineralization. This is a cross-section of that same diagram, and we used a really deep penetrating system that went down over 250 meters. In the old days, we would only be surveying the upper fraction here. So a deep target like this one that's turned up 125 meters down never would have been seen before. So we're planning a hole to hit the gold zone and hit another parallel gold zone and now hit this deep target. My theory is that the gold zone on surface here that Mike was working on is in fact leakage coming from this other. This is the resistivity up here outlining this very, very large structure, a sericite schist hosted system. And this is a summary map of where I'm about to drill. These are holes that are already picked, ready to go. There's a gravel road in from Highway 566, and there's good access. It's actually in an area of clear cut, so we're not cutting down trees. And to the west here, you can not only see the eastern grid, but the western grid, where we're in the process of completing the IP survey, we've got these lines that actually just finished, don't even have the data yet, and these lines in here, and bringing the system back into an area where there's a porphyry occurrence. Porphyry is a key rock that, it's an intrusive rock that actually caused the fluids to flow to bring in the gold deposit in the first place. All the major mines in Timmins are all associated with porphyries. The Hollinger mine has got the Middleton porphyry, and the east end of the Hollinger is the Pearlite porphyry, which is the McIntyre mine, and then the Dome mine. And all of these are over 10 million ounce deposits in shear-hosted carbonate rocks. I'm using this as the model, not just because I made that discovery in 1979, but it shows the importance of a shear-hosted gold deposit. It's still running today. It started Canamax, which Amax formed after it, went bankrupt in 1981. And then it became the beginnings of Kinross, and then it became Lakeshore, which is Tahoe today. And they've produced almost 1 million ounces of gold, as far as I can calculate. I was out of the scene over at Newmont when this actually went into production. And we have a second project that's 100% owned, not just Brunswick 100% owned, but we have the Powell deposit in Shibandawan, and it's next to a major discovery that's presently being drilled by West Dome. This is the Moss Lake discovery. This is a 3 million ounce deposit. And all of these structures are coming out of the Moss Lake deposit down through the Powell Lake property. And I intend to do a grid here and the same IP survey technique that I used in Brunswick. This is the Ardeen mine, which is the oldest gold mine in Ontario, in production in the 1880s. And these structures also come down through Powell. It's road accessible. And we may joint venture this with another interested party, we're not certain. The company is managed here in West Vancouver by Doug Mason, who's got quite a track record. He was Commonwealth Gold, that actually was the money that started Aber Diamond. That was his one success. He sold Clearly Canadian Beverages for $25 million. But he was also the largest land player in the Voisey's Plate back in 1996-97. Myself, you already know, and we have the administration team here, and of course Mike Tremblay, the prospector, who has brought this project to us. So thank you very much, and we've got time for another answer, Bill?